Your brain has a 5-second window before it kills every good idea you have. The alarm goes off, you think get up, and within 5 seconds, your brain has already invented 3 excuses, 2 compromises, and a really convincing reason to hit snooze. That tiny window is where almost every goal you've ever set quietly died. Today you're going to learn how to slam it shut before your brain can talk you out of your own life. The rule is stupidly simple. The moment you feel an instinct to act on a goal, you count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then you move. That's it. No motivation, no pep talk, no waiting until you feel ready. Just a countdown and a physical action. It was popularized by Mel Robbins in 2009 after she invented it, half drunk and broke, watching a NASA rocket launch on TV. She figured if it worked for a rocket, it could work for getting her out of bed. It did. And the reason it works has almost nothing to do with willpower and almost everything to do with a small patch of tissue behind your forehead. That patch is your prefrontal cortex. It's the part of your brain responsible for decisions, focus, goals, and doing hard things you don't feel like doing. Right behind it sits a much older, much louder structure called the basal ganglia, plus a panic button called the amygdala. The basal ganglia runs your habits on autopilot. The amygdala scans for threats. Together, they form what you can think of as your autopilot brain. It's fast, it's efficient, and it absolutely hates change. Anything new, hard, or uncomfortable gets flagged as a potential threat. Your autopilot brain doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and sending a scary email. To it, both feel like danger. So here's what actually happens in those 5 seconds. You get an impulse, say, to go to the gym. For about a quarter of a second, your prefrontal cortex lights up with intention. Then your amygdala notices something unfamiliar is about to happen and starts firing off little stress signals. Your basal ganglia chimes in with the default behavior, which is whatever you usually do, which is usually nothing. Cortisol ticks up. Dopamine, the reward chemical, drops because the reward is far away. And in less time than it takes to tie your shoes, your brain has voted against you. You feel tired. You feel not in the mood. You feel like tomorrow would be better. None of those feelings are facts. They're chemistry, and they happen on a 5-second timer. The countdown interrupts that timer. When you say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 out loud or in your head, you're forcing your prefrontal cortex to do a tiny, structured task. Counting backwards is harder than counting forwards, so it requires real attention. That attention pulls activity away from the amygdala and back into the decision-making part of your brain. Neuroscientists call this kind of redirection a starting ritual. It's the same reason athletes have pre-shot routines and surgeons have pre-op checklists. The ritual takes you out of emotional autopilot and puts you back in the driver's seat. The countdown isn't magic, it's a hijack. There's also a clever piece of language involved. The rule isn't feel like doing the thing in 5 seconds, it's move in 5 seconds. Robbins calls this the difference between deciding and doing. Your brain is wired to confuse the two. You decide to wake up early, and your brain treats that decision like the action is already done. That's why planning feels so good and executing feels so awful. The dopamine hits at the decision, not the doing. The countdown forces a physical movement at the end. You stand up, you open the laptop, you put on the shoes. The instant your body moves, your brain has to catch up to it instead of the other way around. Action creates motivation, not the reverse. That's the part most people get backwards their entire lives. Now let's get specific, because vague advice changes nothing. Use the 5-second rule the moment you feel resistance to something you already know you should do. Alarm goes off, you don't negotiate, you count down and your feet hit the floor. You're about to scroll instead of work, you count down and you close the tab. You want to text someone an apology, but it feels awkward, count down and hit send. You're about to skip the gym, count down and put your shoes on. Notice the pattern. You're not using it to make big life decisions. You're using it on the tiny micro moments where your future self gets quietly betrayed by your current mood. There are 2 ways people break this rule, and you should know both. The first is waiting too long. If you count down and then sit there debating, the window closes and the autopilot wins. The countdown only works if a physical action happens at 1. The second mistake is using it for things you haven't actually decided to do. The rule doesn't tell you what your goals are. It only helps you execute the ones you've already chosen. If you're using it to argue yourself into something you don't really want, your brain will fight you forever, and it should. The 5-second rule is a tool for the gap between intention and action, not a substitute for knowing what you want. There's also a longer-term effect worth understanding. Every time you beat the 5-second window, you weaken the old autopilot loop and start carving a new one. Neuroscientists call this self-directed neuroplasticity. The basal ganglia learns by repetition. It doesn't care whether the repetition is good or bad for you. So every time you snoozed instead of getting up, you trained the snooze loop. Every time you scrolled instead of working, you trained the scroll loop. The countdown lets you start training new loops on purpose. After about 30 to 60 days of doing this consistently, the actions that used to require a countdown start happening more automatically. Your new behavior becomes the autopilot. That's when real change locks in. One more thing to be honest about. This rule won't fix depression, it won't replace therapy, and it won't out-muscle a body that actually needs rest. It's not a cure for being human. It's a small lever for the moments when you know exactly what to do and you're about to not do it anyway. Those moments make up most of a life. The difference between people who build the lives they want and people who don't is rarely talent or luck. It's how often they close that 5-second window before the excuses get there first. So here's your takeaway, and it's the only one that matters. The next time you feel that little flicker of "I should," don't wait. Don't think. Don't negotiate. Count backwards from 5 and at 1, move your body even an inch. Do that today. Do it the next time your alarm goes off. Do it the next time you want to scroll instead of start. 5 seconds is all the time your brain needs to talk you out of your life. It's also all the time you need to take it back.